Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco, Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here once again. I am here today to review Better Call Saul Season 3. And obviously, if you guys haven't, go check out the first two season reviews. I did want to make a mention of two things that I forgot to make in my review of season 2. Number one, or actually three things. Number one, a question I had the whole season that I was disappointed that they never answered was, what was that switch for in episode 1? There's this switch where Jimmy, he's not supposed to touch it, he's not supposed to turn it off, and it's sort of a symbol that he's the type of person who is so easily able to just like, just he's tempted by anything, uh, and so he's obviously gonna pull the switch. It's just something that a person like him is going to do no matter what, and it's kind of like a parallel between the Gene flash forward. What they really should have done though is that they should have had the Gene flashback after he does that in the episode, because it would have made it a lot more suspenseful seeing him. I mean, he flips the switch like over and over and over again. He's like, ooh, ah. He's like he's like a cat playing with a toy or something, like a cat chasing a laser. And he's just like playing around with the switch over and over and over again, and it's like what the hell is that even for? There were a lot of people who said that maybe it's like a security switch and he was gonna go in there and steal it or steal something. Like there were some really weird theories. And we never got to find out though what that switch was for. It's always gonna be really irritating for me, just like this random switch, and it says don't ever turn this off. And of course we knew Jimmy would turn it off. So that would have been a much better thing for them to put the Gene flash forward, sorry, after that switch thing, because it would have been a lot more intense. And the next thing is, they did this interview in season 2, and I find that the creators of TV shows, whenever they're on like a season 2 or like a season 1, they always do these interviews where they talk about the overall future of the series. And a lot of them, basically every time they're lying. Every time it feels like it's just really deceitful what they say. And I'm going to give two other examples. Number one, Brian full of himself. When he started Hannibal, and he did, I think it was Hannibal season 2, where he did the interview, he said he had an 8-season plan. He said he had a blueprint. He said season 1, 2, and 3 are going to be original story. 4 is Red Dragon. 5 is Silence of the Lambs. 6 is Hannibal. And 7, okay, it was 7. And then 7 is going to be an original ending. And then he completely lied, and he went back on his word. And in season 3, he combined the original season 3 story with Hannibal and Red Dragon. He combined 3 seasons of story in one, so that he can do the typical thing where it's like, we can't overstay our welcome by doing more than 5 seasons. And so he totally lied. It was a bitch thing to do, and it was shitty, because he ruined it. I mean, the first 2 seasons of Hannibal were fantastic. Regardless of the issues, they were fantastic. And then that season 3 just shit the bed completely, to where the show got canceled. Good job, Brian full of himself. And then we have Bates Motel. Bates Motel is even worse because Bates Motel really just fizzled out into thin air. Like, nobody even talks about Bates Motel anymore. They still talk about Hannibal sometimes, but nobody ever talks about Bates Motel. It had such potential to, I mean, it really exceeded all expectations until that final season where they just completely rushed it to an ending. And in season 4, at the end of season 4, the creator did an interview. I think it was the creator. He did an interview, and he said it would be really fun to adapt not only the first Psycho, but all the Psycho sequels as like individual seasons. And I guess he was just like bullshitting or something, because then right after that he ends the show. Oh, and the 5th season. I mean, what a weak ass thing to do. And it was so sad because he took elements from Psycho 2, Psycho 3, Psycho 4, Psycho 1, and he just like combined them all together into one thing. It was terrible what he did with that final season. I mean, there was some really good stuff in there mixed in with the bad, but he just completely ruined it. And I think that he had no choice, because the main actor wanted to go do the fucking Good Doctor, which, you know, nobody cares about because I think it got canceled. And so he ended the show. And I just hate it when these show people do these interviews where they completely lie, they misrepresent what's going to happen, and they build up fan expectations. Well, the same thing happened with Better Call Saul. I was really concerned that this show was going to rush to an end like all modern television shows do, except for like a couple of good ones like Cobra Kai doesn't really rush so far. You know, I think they're on their 5th season now, and so, you know, who knows? Like, like, like there were fans, and that's another thing, is that a lot of fanboys encourage this rushing. There were fanboys who were saying that Cobra Kai should have ended after season 1. And it's like, fuck off with that shit. Like, seasons 2, 3, 4, those are really good. And I would much rather have all those than only have season 1. And with this Better Call Saul interview, they talked about the pacing. You know, back in season 2, there were a lot of fanboys who love Better Call Saul now. They say it's Shakespearean right now. A lot of those fanboys, they couldn't stand seasons 1, 2, and 3 because they wanted to get to Saul. And so they would just complain and complain and complain and complain over and over and over again. When is Jimmy gonna become Saul? When is Jimmy gonna become Saul? And they just like say that over and over again every episode, like, it's taking too long for Jimmy to become Saul. And there was the creator did like an interview where he said that not only did they want to continue fleshing out the character of Jimmy, but then they wanted to take you through Breaking Bad in the eyes of Jimmy. Like, they wanted to, like, do a redo of Breaking Bad almost, but in a different perspective. And then they said that the Gene future was a whole new universe of possibilities. And that made me really excited, because the first 2 seasons, I think, take place in the same year. And people talked about, like, season 3 was like 2002 or 2003, and Breaking Bad is in 2007. And so there was a long way away, and I was really happy about that, because I thought it's not going to be rushed. It's not going to be Breaking Bad. It's not going to be all these modern shows where they just completely fast forward through time because they want everything to feel perfect, and then it ends up feeling like trash, discombobulated trash, like basically long movies. But then everything started to unravel in season 3, because in season 3 they don't rush, but there's a feeling of bad. It's like the beginning of badness. There's very minor hints in this season that it's going to start to suck, and they just get worse and worse throughout the future seasons. For instance, the story structure in seasons 1 and 2, for me, it was like the first half was a lot of setup. The first half is just a lot of setting up, setting up. There is story there that's exciting, but it's a lot of setting up for the story of the season. And then in the second half, it's just 5 straight episodes of awesomeness. Like the first 2 seasons, the second halves of them will never be matched by anything that they ever do, because they're going to end after 6 more episodes. So those first 2 seasons, the structure they had was really good. And there definitely needed to be some improvements for sure. I mean, I'm not saying that they're perfect, but they were really, really good, and I really enjoyed them. Season 3 had a completely different structure. The season 3 structure is disastrous, to say the least. You have the first episode, kinda. The first episode is basically all about how Jimmy and his relationship with Chuck, and how he really wants to be Chuck's friend, and he wants to be close with them. He doesn't want to be like a Saul Goodman type who just say, fuck that guy, fuck Chuck. All the fans created this hashtag, fuck Chuck. And I've never ever agreed with the hashtag more in my life. Like, I would always hashtag that hashtag every single episode I watch it on Twitter. I'd be like, episode 4, fuck Chuck. Episode 5, fuck Chuck. Like, I was full on team fuck Chuck. But that was the whole first episode. It was not really, it kind of felt like, okay, we have slowed down to molasses, to where but that's not the problem. The problem is Mike. There is 20 plus minutes in the first episode of Mike just fucking looking around for a bug and then retracing the bug back to the people who put it there in the first place. And the music is really good. I will say one of the highlights of season 3 is the music. The music in seasons 1 and 2 was pretty good, for the most part. It was not amazing, but it was pretty good. Season 3 is where the music really got good, and where the music really started compensating for some of the more slower moments. And the music in these sequences where Mike is looking around is really good. But the sequences are so boring. I just wanted to fall asleep. Like, I wanted to fast forward, but I also wanted to fall asleep, and so I was just sitting there in miserable pain, watching these boring sequences. And that first episode, it's a waste. The first episode, it's like a B-, and that's being generous. And then in the second episode, it's almost like a comedy episode, where there's like a structure where the first half is really comedic, because the second half is really, really intense and serious. And so I will admit, I love the sequence where Jimmy is going, quote-unquote, undercover to look for the person who accepts the money in Los Pollos Hermanos. That whole sequence where he's sitting there and, he's just so terrible at being like a private investigator. Like he's sitting there and he's like looking around and he's like pretend eating. Like it's just so hilarious. Like I remember laughing like just so hard at that sequence. Like that was so funny. And then of course he gets to have an encounter with Gus. And that whole thing, putting his watch in the trash, and that was really, really good. That was a great idea. And then in the second half, it's just this very simple build up where it's like, what's going on? What's going on? What's Chuck doing? He's got this private investigator in his house. What's that guy doing there? Why is Howard jumping over fences like a little bitch? And that's another thing. I swear, this season, and as I said before in the season 6 reviews, Howard started off as a really interesting character, and he's a great actor. He started off as a really interesting character where I thought that he's going to go interesting places. Season 2, he's Chuck's bitch. Season 3, he's even more of Chuck's bitch to where he's like fetching things and shit for Chuck. Like he's fetching him some food. He's fucking jumping over fences and like getting on his hands and knees like a dog. Like he is just such a bitch in this season. I despise his character. He's such a shitty corporate jackass. Like it gets bad. It gets really bad with Howard. Like I'll say that after rewatching this season, I think that Howard looks the worst out of any character on the whole season. Chuck is pretty bad, but he is mentally ill, which we get to in the second half, which I liked. But other than that, like I guess Hector is pretty bad, but Hector doesn't really even get a chance to do very many bad things. So he's, because they're rushing through that story to have him, and that's one of the things that they were rushing with. They rushed with a couple of storylines this season, and you could feel it. And it's too bad because a lot of the downtime in the first half of the season, they could have used that downtime to cut out boring moments and put in moments of Hector, more moments of Chuck. They could have done so much more with the first half. So and then of course Jimmy comes and tries to destroy the tape. And it is another good twist where we find out, oh shit, the cassette tape was never the piece of evidence that Chuck really intended on using. He intended on having Jimmy come there, angry, break in. I really liked that twist, but it was such a simple... A lot of the episodes in the future of Better Call Saul, they're just so simple that they're not as interesting as other episodes. Like, they'll just be all about 2 or 3 things, and it's like, okay, this is pretty boring. And this episode, it's not boring, because this was back when the show was good. But in the later seasons, they have these simple episodes like Axe and Grind, where it's just very simple. You have these simple sequences that last like 10 minutes each, and they're really boring. So I gave it a B+. And something else I'd like to talk about, I just forgot to mention at the beginning because it was such a surprise to me and a shock. Since the beginning of Better Call Saul, I have always thought that Kevin and Paige of Mesa Verde, I always thought that they were married. I always thought Kevin and Paige are a married couple. But then I realized, like, oh shit, they're not married. They're just partners at their fucking bank. It's mind blowing. Like it's so weird because they look like a married couple. They act like a married couple. I was like, what the fuck? I thought, oh, how the, I, I'm still in complete shock. They totally had chemistry on screen. And I'm blown away by that. I am completely blown away. So that was weird. That was a weird thing that I found out, that I was like, oh my god. For years now, ever since when? When did Better Call Saul season 2 come out? 2015, 2016? I have been thinking that Kevin and Paige have been married for 7 years. That's pretty bad, I gotta admit. And then we have sunk costs. Oh my god, this episode was boring. This episode was trash. It was, and I give it a C plus because it was still okay, I guess. Some of the stuff, and it was just Jimmy getting arrested, and just so boring, and it was such a waste of time. It could have been a good episode, but it wasn't. And then we have Sabrosito. I used to really hate this episode. I used to just think that this episode was another waste of time. But I actually have grown to like some of the stuff in the episode after seeing the later seasons. You know, I appreciate it more now. I appreciate it all more now because it's all so much better than the later seasons. I give Sabrosito a B minus. Because you have that 20-minute sequence where Hector just barges into Los Pollos Hermanos, and it's like this really weak ass takeover thing that he does, where he's like, my men's trucks are being taken, and my transportation, I want to use your transportation, and I am the cartel. I mean, he's such an idiot, and it comes off as such a petty thing. Like he's like a mean girl. He's like stealing soda from people, and just like smoking, and like it's really weird. It's a very bizarre sequence, and you think what I thought, what the reason why I did not like it was, number one, it was another waste of time. Like, if he was smart, he would know from the very beginning that that's not going to fly with the Don Eladio. And so I really just thought that was, like, pretty stupid of Hector. And Hector is a smart character. You know, he's the one who ends up killing Gus, and so he's not as stupid as this episode makes him out to be. And the sad thing is that Hector's storyline is very rushed, because in my opinion he didn't get a chance to shine as a villain in this season. In season 2, he was a good villain. And he had hints of really evil. Like, you just thought, he's pretty cold. His men are cold. He's pretty evil. And then in season 3, he's just this bumbling idiot who gets easily tricked by Nacho, and he just easily gets taken out. Easily. And so they could have taken the opportunity to have him be more of a villain in this episode, and they didn't. He's just this idiot who walks around Los Pollos Hermanos, spouting off, and it was almost like watching like a little kid walk around puffing his chest, like a little kid making muscles and running around like with his underpants on. That's what I used to do. I would just run around the house with my underpants on, and like just imagining like that. Like that's what Hector was acting like, and I just thought that's stupid. And then some stuff happens in the second half. It's more boring build up. It's nothing but build up to episode 5. So the question is, this is a good gray question where some people might think one way, some people might think another way. Is 4 episodes of trash worth getting to one great episode in chicanery? Is chicanery really worth having 4 whole hours of mediocre storytelling? No, it isn't. You know why? Because 4 hours of mediocre storytelling makes a bigger impression than 1 hour of fantastic storytelling. So, chicanery, even though it's really good, it wasn't worth those first 4 episodes. And it is really good. I give it an A+, obviously. And there's no debate there. But those first 4 episodes, they were so bad. And they were terrible. And talking about Mike, too, wow. Wolf. Mike's story is pretty boring and bad this season. I've always thought this, too. Like, I talked about it with Safi back when it came out. Mike's story grinds to a halt. And again, wasted potential. Because in season 2, it was so fun and cool seeing Mike go up against Hector and seeing him. And also, I'm watching outside. 2 squirrels are like fucking chasing each other around because they don't want the other to find like a nut or something. Like, it's really funny. These squirrels are just like hopping around, and then they see each other and they're chasing each other. But Mike's story in this season, what is it? He finds out Gus is following him. Gus makes an offer that he refuses, and he rejects the call, but then he decides maybe I can do one thing. And then we have some really boring snooze fest sequences where he's at therapy or this therapy talk session, and there's this woman, and I guess she lost her husband in the war, and it's just like boring as hell. I wanted to like stab my eyeballs out and fall asleep because it was so boring. And it's like, what is going on with Mike? Like, what is going on? See what I mean by bad story structure? It should have been much better than that. I mean, honestly, after that season 2, it was such a letdown, what they did with Mike in season 3. The only good thing I would say about the whole season with Mike is his scene with Lydia. Because I do kind of like the idea that he takes all that money and then he launders it through Madrigal. I know that they already talked about that in Breaking Bad, kinda, but I like seeing the interaction with him and Lydia. I liked it. For some reason, I thought it was a very fun scene. And that's just a very small, minor thing, but I like that part. But that was the only thing the whole season. Whereas with season 2, Mike does something cool like almost every episode. There's something to talk about with Mike. So you can see right there that they completely dropped the ball with Mike. Dropped the ball with Hector. And the list goes on. Chicanery, though, I mean, what's there to say about chicanery that hasn't already been said? It's just nothing but payoffs. It's nothing but waiting for that ball to drop at the end of the episode, that shoe to drop where Chuck has a breakdown. It's very, very good acting. It's probably some of the best acting I've ever seen on television. And I liked the episode so much that when I rewatched this season, this past week, I actually watched that episode twice. because I love that so much, that whole sequence. But the thing is that even though that episode was great, after that it gets pretty weird. Because after that we figure out that Jimmy never stole money from his father. He would only lift rare coins, and he would take those because his dad was going to give them away anyway. So, he basically did nothing wrong in that department. It was just misinterpretation by Chuck. So that's another thing that Jimmy actually never did in the first place. And we get a lot of that, like, even with the writers, the way that they treat the Jimmy character in the second half of the season, it's pretty weird because they treat Jimmy like he did something wrong for defending himself. Like, how dare Jimmy expose Chuck, expose the fact that his illness is fake, expose the fact that his brother hates him. Like, these are key things to understanding why Jimmy should not be punished to the fullest extent that they wanted to punish him. So that's just complete BS to me. Like the whole thing with Kim, where Kim is like, we were just tearing down a very sick man. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, where did this come from? Like, you go from 5 episodes where you're treating Chuck like he's Darth Vader, and then all of a sudden after that, it's like, oh no, sad face. Like, honestly, it's retarded. The only thing that was understandable was the thing with Rebecca, where she was very upset with Jimmy. That was the only thing that I really understood. Okay, that makes sense why she would be upset. But everyone else, like Howard, the way that Howard treats Jimmy after that courtroom thing, honestly, I was kind of surprised that Howard wasn't impressed by that. Like, that he wasn't, like, it's because he has to, like, say sorry to all of his clients that Chuck embarrassed himself. And that's another thing, too, is that Howard sort of acts like Chuck is responsible for all this shit when Howard never had to ever be as much of a bitch as he was to him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if Howard would have gone with Jimmy and he said, Jimmy, we've had our differences, but Chuck is doing something, he's trying to do something really bad. I can't risk this damaging reputations. And so let's figure out a way to stop this. And let's figure out a way to destroy that tape. He followed Chuck's every command like a blind dog. So to act like Chuck is the only one at fault for everything bad is just kind of bizarre. So like him going to, he's complaining that he's complaining that he has to go to lunch with people and go to breakfast with people to say sorry. And it's like, who cares? Like, that sounds fun. Like, wouldn't you like to go out to a fancy restaurant 3 meals a day so that you could just, like, say sorry and just explain things? Like, who cares? Like, that doesn't sound bad at all. That sounds like an Omaze experience or something where you donate a little money and you have a chance to go out and like, let's say you got to eat at like a 5-star restaurant 3 times a day. Like, okay, that'll be fun. I guess the expense would not be as fun, but it's like a one-time thing where, you don't have to do that all the time. And so the way that he's like mad at Jimmy because Jimmy defended himself, like the way everyone is so mad that Jimmy defended himself, is just stupid. Like, the only person who was happy that Jimmy won and that he defended himself was Paige, and Paige is Well, we'll talk about her later in another video because I'm gonna be making a funny video pretty soon about something. Uh, what's that? Okay. So I gave Off-Brand a B plus. And so in the first half, it's all about this cassette tape, this trial. And the second half, it's all about Jimmy struggling to make money to pay the rent of the office. And Off-Brand is pretty good. Pretty good. Obviously, more film crew, which I love. In season 2, there was a lot of film crew. And so what did they say with season 3? Let's bring back the film crew again and have even more of them. So I really love seeing the film crew all the time. And let's see, what's next? Well, Expenses and Slip is a good parallel story. And I will say that too. Expenses and Slip, I give both of those episodes an A. In Expenses, Jimmy, he's really struggling. He's having a shitty time at the garbage place, the garbage pickup site where he's got to pick up garbage for hours for community service. And he nobody will buy a commercial. Nobody will, and these drumming guys, these music store guys, these twins, they're some shitheads. The way that they screwed Jimmy out of getting a commercial, because he said, I'll give you one free one, and then the next one you'll pay for if you like the first one's response. And they completely just screw him over. And you have this really brilliant parallel where it really explains the character of Jimmy in a satisfying way, where he struggles and struggles to get anything accomplished, and then he'll just cut a corner and take an easier way, and he'll get a better result than he ever could have thought of. Like the thing with the garbage site in the Slip episode, where he threatens to sue the head of the whatever the group, the fucking trash people, the trash guy walking around to monitor everyone when he threatens to sue him, and then he also gets $700 from this drug dealer. It's such a fantastic display of, oh look, this is like a perfect example. Like, he'll have a struggle, and then he'll just cut a corner. And it's great. It's great and simple, yet there's a lot going on. Very, very good. And then, let's see, Fall and Lantern, I give both of those A pluses. So there's only 3 A plus episodes this season. And I have more notes too. I made sure to write down notes. And so there was this very, very stupid explanation in season 6 by fanboys for why the show is boring. Fanboys said Better Call Saul should be allowed to be boring because in season 3 we needed scenes like Nacho practicing the pill drop where he's going to poison Hector. And we need scenes like that where he's practicing and he's doing the thing where he drops it in the coat and everything and he makes the pills. But it's hilarious because I checked and that sequence is only like 2 minutes long. So you're comparing a 2-minute sequence to sequences in season 6 which last like the entire episode. I mean, I am sorry, but 2 minutes of Nacho doing stuff with pills is a lot better. It has no comparison to like 20 minutes in season 6 in an episode of Gus just walking around being scared of Lalo. Like, sorry, but that's just such a weak comparison. And it's funny because a better comparison would have been Chuck in the finale, where he's tearing apart his house for 10 whole minutes. But guess what? That 10-minute sequence with Chuck, that's entertaining. I like that. I'm entertained by that. I thought that was a great sequence. And so that would also be a shitty comparison. So it's just really a BS comparison to make up for and to excuse bad and boring storytelling in season 6. So that was dumb. That was really, really dumb. We needed scenes like that to get to the good stuff. And it's like, yeah, of course we need scenes to get to payoff scenes. But the problem is, are the scenes any good? If they're not, then they're not good. Like, that's objective. Like, just because the ending is great, that doesn't mean the rest of the show can be trash. And the ending wasn't even great either. And then we have the whole thing with Howard. Howard, he decides to go against Chuck for the first time in his life, and he decides to stand up against Chuck by being like a terrible person, where, you want to talk about people tearing down a mentally ill man. Well, Howard finds out that Chuck's premiums are going to go up on his insurance, and he immediately threatens him into quitting, and basically intimidates him into quitting, and makes all these implications. Like, really, really shitty person in Howard. And then, of course, in the final episode, he forces Chuck out, and he's going to pay him millions of dollars out of his pocket. And it was so evil, like, watching that, honestly. Like, they made it that way too. They wanted you to feel bad for Chuck. And honestly, I did feel bad for him in the final episode of the season. Really felt bad for him, the way that the way that Howard treated him. Chuck can't treat himself. So honestly, like, Howard, what he did to Chuck, I gotta say, in season 6, when Howard dies, I actually like that episode now, because I'm gonna be cheering for Howard to die after what he did to Chuck in this episode. So I don't feel bad for Howard at all anymore, actually. After rewatching season 3, I feel nothing for Howard anymore. Like, the way that they just, like, added all that cheap, baity stuff in season 6 to make you feel bad for him. Look, guys, Howard is married. He's not single or gay. He's married. And it's like, oh, wow. It's good to finally find that out so that we can have some sympathy points for him in that episode where he dies by Lalo for no reason whatsoever. Oh, God. Season 6. Oh. Ooh. Okay. But actually now, I want to go back and watch that episode again, because I'm going to be like, yeah! Good job, Lalo! I don't feel bad for Howard anymore. I feel bad for Chuck in season 3. And then the Sandpiper scheme with Irene, that was another highlight of the season, because it's the first bad thing that Jimmy has ever done, I would say. Ever. In his whole life, I would say that is the first objectively bad thing he's ever done. Like, breaking into Chuck's house, who cares? Like, who cares? Like, his brother changed the locks on him. He had to get in there somehow. I mean, I would have done the same thing. Well, no, I wouldn't. I would probably do it, I would do it smartly, where it would be like a scheme where I would like break in when he's away, and I would destroy the tape because that was really evil what Chuck did to Jimmy. I mean, Chuck acted like Jimmy did this big thing in betraying him, but Chuck betrayed Jimmy first. I mean, he did the cassette tape thing, and so I felt no sympathy for him for having his house broken into, had his door broke down. Who cares? Uh, Obviously, that's not a good thing to do. I wouldn't ever do something like that, but in terms of the show, like this is a show universe, this is a TV show universe. I don't think Jimmy has ever done anything wrong ever until this Irene Landry scheme. And he realizes that it was bad. I mean, he makes it so that that poor old woman doesn't have any friends. Everyone hates her. I mean, it is dark. It is really, really dark. And it's actually pretty depressing. Because usually Jimmy, everything that he does is lighthearted. You know, you can laugh at it, like the thing with the Kettlemans, the way that he has Mike steal their money, and then he says, it's already been turned in, and now you're going to turn yourselves in. Fucking jackasses, Kettlemans, fuck you. But this thing with Irene that he did, it was really dark, and he feels really bad, and he figures out that, wait a second, I shouldn't be doing this type of stuff. And so that's why he gives up the office, is because he feels so bad that the need for money for that office made him do that. And then of course he does the whole scheme with with Aaron from Davis and Mann. That was a very good sequence, and you feel really bad because Jimmy just destroyed all this work of becoming an elderly lawyer. And so it was also a good idea for, you know, his transformation into Saul. Because obviously old people, they're not going to want to work with him anymore. They're not going to want his help. So I like that as well. Another thing that I forgot to mention is Francesca is probably season 3 Francesca. She's probably one of my favorite characters in both universes' history, because she's very sweet and innocent, and she's very funny, and she's really, really likable, and she makes for a great character in this season 3. And so that's why I really don't like seasons 4 and 5 and so on, because there was such a good dynamic in this season 3 with Jimmy and Kim working together in the same building, Francesca being their secretary. It was a great dynamic. And you have to wonder, if they didn't have Breaking Bad, would they have kept Jimmy and Kim working in that office building with Francesca too? I don't know. And then, of course, the thing with Kim's story this season is she helps Jimmy in the first half, kinda, and, you know, that's just kind of meh. In the second half, she's overworking herself, which is a good payoff after seasons 1 and 2. And then, of course, she gets in a car crash. I mean, I like her character a lot. It's just not really as good as season 2. Her story in season 2. And then, of course, Chuck, he commits suicide by, like, kicking a lantern over and lighting his house on fire. And it's really depressing and sad. I remember watching that episode, and honestly, I think that Lantern is a better episode than Chicanery. Even though I would say Chuck's death is pretty rushed. Like, having him die this early, it's pretty rushed. Because the dynamic that he has with Jimmy, he's Jimmy's opposite. He's Jimmy's antagonist. And to take him away so soon is really sad, because they had such good chemistry on screen, that every scene that they were in together is a scene that I love. I would give an A plus to all their scenes together. So taking him away like that, I think he should have died at the end of season 4. I think that they should have kept him. And honestly, they could have done something really fun where he is back to normal, quote unquote, in season 4. And it would have helped, because in season 4, there's no lawyer stuff for the most part. Like Kim, she's basically having a breakdown kinda in season 4, and she's trash in season 4. And so there's like this empty spot where you can feel a vacancy in the show. And I really think that Chuck being there in the background, being a successful lawyer temporarily, I think that that would have been a much better story structure to the series. But yeah, I did feel bad for Chuck, and that final scene with him and Jimmy, that was really, really good. And, people, whenever they talk about the show, they never really even talk about these earlier seasons anymore. And there's so much incredible storytelling. Like, honestly, he deserved an Emmy for playing Chuck in season 3. And it was perfect. Some of these scenes, they were perfect. And now all people do is just talk about how Chuck was right, which that's another thing. Like, I don't think so. I don't really think that at all. I would never ever say that Chuck was right. He might have been right about a couple of things, but he wasn't right about the big picture. He wasn't right about everything completely, as though he was like this all-knowing grand master of the universe, and he knew the truth about Jimmy. Like, no, because he didn't know about the coin thing. He thought his brother was stealing. He was taking coins that his dad was going to give away. And so, like, he did not know everything. And then finally, my last thing is Hector. Hector's death in this season is pretty rushed. I did really like the story with Nacho, because his father is a really great character. He's very, very likable, and you really don't want anything bad to happen to him. And so you're really hoping that Nacho will kill Hector in some way. And the whole pill scheme, I really think that Mike should have been involved with that. I really think that that would have been a lot more intense and more satisfying. And so Hector dies, and it again. I think I've already said this. It was wasted potential, because it would have been nicer to see him walking around as a villain more before he gets the stroke and he doesn't get killed, but he gets he gets put in a chair, and he's the character from Breaking Bad. It would have been nicer to see the walking around Hector a little bit longer. So my food rating for season 3, I would say season 3, it's pretty mixed. Like, the first half is trash. The second half is okay. It's pretty good. So overall, it's not as good as seasons 1 or 2, but it is pretty good. It's way better than seasons 4, 5, and 6. I would rate this season in terms of food, at Christmas time, sometimes we used to get this pack of cookies. And it would be 2 cookies of each flavor in this big pack. And you have flavors like salted chocolate chip, white chocolate macadamia nut, peanut butter, sugar cookies, snickerdoodle. And they were some really good cookies. but there were some pretty gross flavors. There were the lemon flavor was gross, and that's what this season is like. There's no cohesiveness to me. Season 2 was so masterful at having all these storylines balancing off of each other and like just completely working in sync to create this like really amazing ultimate story out of everything. In season 3, everything has fallen apart and everything is disconnected. And it's the first season in the show where everything feels disconnected. And that was the ultimate downfall of the show. Because seasons 1 and 2 were better than everything else. They had that feeling of connection. Especially season 2. Where it was so good. Wow. So you have those bad flavors. You have those good flavors. And overall, you have to eat all the cookies because you got them. And, what are you going to give a cookie to a raccoon? No, you're going to eat it yourself and you're going to, try to enjoy it. Even though it's not very good, it is better than what's to come, though. And thank you for watching. Please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of Season 3. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more Better Call Saul reviews, because I will be reviewing Seasons 4 and 5. And let me tell you, I am going to go hard at those seasons after having refreshed my memory for the millionth time, because I've watched those first 3 seasons so many times. So goodbye, everybody. See you soon.